Okay, my YouTube people, this is the assembly video of my 1946 Knucklehead transmission. Of course, I always have the manuals open while I'm doing this job. The Knucklehead manual has very good pictures of the transmission blown apart. However, the Panhead manual has the specs real easy to find and read. So I'll have both of these open. First thing I'm going to install into the transmission is fourth gear or main drive gear. And what you need to do is you need to mic the inner bearing race for the bearings. You also need to mic the outside bearing race to determine what your bearing clearances are. For main drive gear for this transmission, the bearing clearances are 1/2 thousandths to 2/1000ths. I'm going to get a 1 to 2 inch mic. I'm going to come in here and check it. The outside diameter of the inner race is 1.629. So you got to write that down. And I have that written down right here, 1.629. Next, you get a bore gauge and you check the inner diameter of the outer race. And you can see right there that it's 1.880. Now, I bought a new pack of standard size bearings because I had already measured this. And the size of standard bearings are 0.125, which is 1/8 of an inch. So to figure out your clearance, you want to take the outside race, 1.880, subtract it from the inner race, which is 1.629, and that's equal to 0.251. Now, you have to take and multiply your bearing diameter by 2. So it's 0.125 times 2, and that's 0.25. Now you have to subtract those numbers. 0.251 minus 0.250 is equal to 1/1000th. That's my clearance, 1/1000th of an inch, and that's plenty in spec. If you don't have the inside and outside micrometers, you can use a vernier caliper to check it, and you just set it on here and you check it, and it gets you close enough. And as you can see right there, that's 1.880. And then you can just take it on the gear like this, and you can see that that's at 1.629. So it's easy enough to do it that way. I will double check my bearings, but I'll do that off camera. The Harley part number is 9084, and the V-twin part number is 17-0145, and that's an 88 pack. Now I'm going to install the bearings on the main drive gear. You have to use some kind of grease that melts, so you can either use some kind of assembly lube paste or petroleum jelly. And what happens is once these things get hot, they melt out of there. If you use lithium grease, it'll never go away. If you use lithium grease, it'll starve the bearings for lubrication. So I just use Vaseline because it's cheap. When you're installing fourth gear, you have to put this washer on. This is what the bearings run up against. So you can see where the bearings were kind of running right out here on this. There's no groove there. So what you can do is flip it over and use it, and then it'll wear on a different spot. Put that on, I'll cover it in Vaseline. Okay, so I will mic every one of these, but just to check them, I just like to check them before I start, and there they are, right at 125. I'll check all these bearings before I use them, even though they're new out of the pack, just to make sure I didn't get a wrong one. There it is, right at 0.125. The easiest way I found to do this is you put about 1/4 of the surface with bearings. Then you put it up in here, like that. And now you start dropping the bearings in from the top like this. And once you get them like that, you just keep stacking them in there along, and the grease is already in there. I'll do the rest of this off camera and then show you what it looks like. Okay, I got all 44 of the bearings in there, and I recommend that you count them out first before you start so that you don't make a mistake with getting the right amount in. Sometimes they can put extra in the pack, and it's possible you may even get shorted. So there you go, rolls nice and free. I got plenty of the petroleum jelly in there. One thing you want to do is you want to mic your shafts to make sure there's no wear. Sometimes, even though they're not scored, they could have some wear on them, so you do want to check for that. You want to mic right here and then compare it where the gears ride. Even though I can't really feel anything here, it's best to mic it. So that's the first thing I'll do. So that mic's right at 1 inch. Now I'll check the wear surface. And you want to check up and down this entire wear surface. So that mic's at about a half a thousandths under 1 inch. So I'm going to call that good. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to assemble this shaft. I'm going to put first and second gear on. Then I'm going to put the bearing race on. Then next this bearing goes on. Although this transmission didn't have any problems and this bearing feels great, I did buy a new bearing. And the V-twin part number for this bearing is 12-9937. This bearing was also in this Sonex bag, part number HDNB0005. And then it's a koi bearing. And that part number is 6305ZZC3. This is a nice looking bearing, and this goes on. The way I get this on is just hold it like this and give it a couple light taps. You can see it's already most of the way on. You know it's all the way on when the bearing's up against first gear. Now you just slip this outer piece on, it goes on pretty easy. Now I got it all together. The outer piece, the bearing's in there, and it's up against the gear. Before I put third gear on, I'm going to lube it with some petroleum jelly. And the nice thing about this is, it's a hot day here, and it's already starting to melt. So once the transmission gets moving, it'll melt right out, and the gear oil will take its place, and everything will be good. But it's pre-lubed. So now, you put the shaft through the hole, you put third gear onto it, you put your spacer on and your locking ring. Then you put your shifter clutch on, and you have to make sure that high faces high gear or fourth gear. You put that on. And before you take all that and put it in, I'm going to put a little lube on the inside of fourth gear here. Make sure that the bushing in there has some lube on it. Now you just take and slip it in, being careful not to damage that bushing in fourth gear or high gear. And once you get it here, you slip third up onto the shaft. You bring the snap ring up, and then you keep pushing it in a little at a time. Now you want to push third all the way on. Before I push third all the way on, you can see this groove here, and that's where that locking ring goes. But first, the spacer washer goes on. There goes the washer. Now the snap ring has to get on. And to get that on, I have this screwdriver I've been a 90-degree on, and I have this straight screwdriver. Now I roll that locking ring around till right here I see the opening on it. Start by bringing it up there, on there. Now I roll it a little, and then I turn this, and that lifts it up. I get the next section on. I just keep doing that all the way around. While I'm holding it with my thumb, I go to the next section. I just turn that, and it lifts it high enough to get it on there. Okay, now that I got it started, just push it up on there. You want to make sure you hear it click in. Now the other thing that's important is after you think that you have it in, is to get a flashlight and check and make sure that it's in the groove at each point. And right there is not. And now it is. So now it's in the groove the whole way around. And I just like it take and pry on third gear a little bit. That way if it's not in the groove, you'll see it real easy. It'll move the snap ring and you'll see it real easy. Now you have to get the shifter clutch up on the splines. Okay, now I have the shifter clutch up on the splines. Now we take a measurement. The next thing you want to check is third gear end play. And it says it should be 0 to 17 thousandths of an inch. So the way I do this is I come down in here with a feeler gauge, and I press it firm against second gear, and I measure in here. I needed 3 feeler gauges, and they're at 45 thousandths. Now with it pushed over, I check it again, and it's snug there. I have 19, 20, and 22. Right there, I just checked it, and it's 61. And then I subtract 45 from 61, and I come up with 16, which is right in spec. So I'm going to leave that go. Now I can install the plate that holds the bearing in and the oil deflector like this. And the 4 screws go right on like that. Of course, I'll be using blue Loctite on those screws. This notch goes here. Now I have the 4 screws in and the oil deflector. I'm going to install the main gear bearing keeper and the seals. The kit I'm using is James Gasket transmission kit. The part number is JGI-33031-70, and it fits 36 through 86 4-speed transmissions. Now I'm going to install the seal, and there's a little metal lip on the back, and that's the part that goes inside. And you can see I have the RTV up against it. Before I installed, I put a little oil around the lip of the seal. Now I'll just tap it in with a small hammer. I wound up using my sprocket nut tool that I made, and the socket end on this is 1 7/8". Then I just wiped off the excess RTV. Next thing I have to do is install this seal here on this shaft. Most of the time you're better off putting this on before you put 4th gear into the motorcycle. I didn't do that, but I'm going to do it now. Installing this, I take and put some oil on the inside of the seal lip, and then I'm going to take some red RTV and just put a very thin coating on the outside of this seal, and then I'll put it in. Now, I use this tool here. Not really sure what it was or where I got it at this point. I've had it for a long time, but I know why I got this tool. For neck bearings. This installs the races for the Harleys on the neck bearings. It fits over the shaft all the way, and this flat surface will push this seal in straight. I'll put the oil right on here. Now you can see it's down. Now let's tap it down with a hammer. Then I just take a rag and wipe off the excess. And it's as simple as that.